Welcome to Architects of Imagination, a game dev podcast where we talk to the brilliant minds behind your favorite video games. And it is my very great pleasure today to introduce my close friend, Mr. Jake Simpson.
Brilliant minds, huh? Well, what are you talking to me for? You must be scraping the bottom of that barrel, mate.
Brilliant and/or one of the most entertaining people I know.
Was Chris Butcher busy today, was he?
Jake Simpson here is known for some pretty legendary projects. He is currently the founder, owner, and operator of TNB Studios. In his come up, he has worked on some pretty legendary games, including NBA Jam, Mortal Kombat 2 and 3. Correct me if I get any of these wrong. Star Trek Elite Forces, Jedi Knight 2, The Sims, Heretic 2.
Soldier of Fortune 1 and 2.
Yeah, the Age of Empires Definitive Edition.
The Sims 2. Yeah, it goes on a bit.
Yeah, a couple, and a whole bunch more too. So amazing! You've had quite a career, Mr. Jake. So tell us. Let's start with what you're up to right now. What's TNB Studios doing that you can talk about?
Well, we should talk a bit about what TNB actually stands for, because I'm not going to tell you. The whole idea is that in every interview I ever do, I'm going to disagree with myself about what TNB actually stands for. So today, it stands for Totally Naughty Boys.
Does that refer to us specifically?
Well,
you and I?
Of course, yes. So, TNB Studios, interestingly, we literally just celebrated our 10th anniversary about 2 days ago on June 13th. Yeah, I'm terrible at remembering dates and things like that. I'm absolutely awful at it. And so I happened to be looking through my incorporation documents for other reasons, and I saw the date and I was like, oh, it's 10 years, which, the average company doesn't last 2 years in America. I feel pretty proud of. I mean, there's 18 of us now here, spread out across the world. I have people in Switzerland and England and Brazil and North America and all the rest of it. But the fact there's 18 of us, I only started hiring people about 5 years ago, and the only reason I did that was because the wife basically said to me, well, are we going to move or are we staying in Arizona? And I was like, well, I went to some job interviews, got a few job offers. We all looked at each other and went, well, are we going to do this or not? And she went, no, I think we should stay here, and you better make it work. So this is me trying to make it work.
All right.
So what are we doing now? I didn't answer your question. The question is, we are spread across several different projects. I have people working for Skydance Interactive on their VR products. We have an internal project called Lassen's Loop, which I will talk a little bit more about in a minute. And we're doing an external product for a client in Seattle that owns a real-time strategy game IP, which I can't really talk about right now. But we're doing the majority of my team is focused on that, and we've got about a couple of years or a year or so left to work on that. So it's not announced, so we can't really talk about it very much.
Awesome.
That's what we're doing now.
Great. And you guys just wound down some work on Age of Empires Definitive Edition, yeah?
Oh, well, we did that a while ago. We got done pretty much as the product was shipping. We were working in conjunction with a group called Forgotten Empires. Forgotten Empires did most of the content work for Age of Empires Definitive Edition and Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition. In fact, they went on and did a lot of the content work for Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, and also I think they contributed to Age of Empires 4, although Relic did most of the work on that. But yeah, we did some of the engineering work on that. Yes, we did a lot of that actually. And after that, we did a product for Q Games in Japan that got really close to release, and then Apple decided it wasn't going to get released, and I don't know what the status of that is. It's owned by Dylan over at Q, and it might well see the future. I don't know. It's up to him.
Yeah, and Dylan's known as the fellow who created Star Fox, right?
Amongst other things, yeah. I mean, Dylan's had a very varied career. It's amazing, and he was interviewed on that that documentary thing as well, wasn't he? I can't remember what it was called, but there was a document. Look at him sipping his drinks, just like I am. Wow. Except he's got a nice, elegant glass. I got a plastic.
Delicious tequila in it.
Mine's delicious too, yeah. Anyway, right. So yeah, we've been kicking around in the industry for quite some time. My first game was on a Commodore 64, which gives you an idea of how old I am. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I just recently bought a Commodore 64. I had one in high school, and I just fired up a round of Archon after my D&D session last week. I played Archon with a youngster, and barely squeaked out a victory. Still an awesome game.
Well, I worked on Archon for the Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC in the UK. Well, I say I worked on. I actually sat next to the guy who worked on most of it, did most of it. But yeah, and we had no source code. There was no source code for that at the time. We we got given some source code, I think, for an Amstrad version of it. But in the end, we literally just sat and played the game and worked out all the rules and then implemented them ourselves. I remember we'd
Wow.
sit and watch. Gordon Fong was the guy who wrote most of the code, and we'd sit there and play, and he'd be like, "It's going to do this next," and then it would do something else, and then he'd go, "Oh no, that's right, it's going to do that because blah blah blah," and we would sit there predicting what it was going to do. It's a fantastic bit of work. It was a husband and wife team, I think, in California who made the original one.
Okay.
And I remember reading an article about them, and they were saying that they were martial arts guys as well. They had a martial arts school, and they were in really low budget martial art movies as well as making video games.
Interesting. That's wild. Talking about some of the earlier, I've been on a sort of vintage computer kick lately. I just bought it in television that doesn't work. I'm trying to learn electronics so I can attempt to repair it. Let's
In
see if
television is interesting because originally when that first came out, it was called a Sears game console, because Sears were the one who funded the first like 200,000 of them that were manufactured before Intellivision bought the name back and created their own version of it. But yeah, there is a version out there. I have one somewhere that is
Really?
yeah, it's like it's this beige. Looks like stucco. It's a beige stucco box, but it is an Intellivision. You can plug in television cartridges in it and it just works. But
Yeah,
I have some of those.
I saw recently that there's one that's got the Sears branding on it. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I remember you coming to my house in LA years ago, and my vintage console collection with the oh god, what was the first? Not the Magnavox Odyssey. What was the like late '70s one? I think that's it. Magnavox.
No, it was a Magnavox Odyssey. Yeah, there was an Odyssey and Odyssey 2. I have an Odyssey
Yep.
2. I don't have an Odyssey 1 though.
I
Yeah,
had
those are hard to
those, and pretty much all of the Nintendo's, Sony's, Xboxes, Jaguar, a few other like
Relatively easy to
weird
come, yeah.
ones. And you come right in and you go, well, you don't have a Vectrex.
You don't?
Well, I went and got
do.
one because you called me out.
Did you
for not
really?
having one.
Did you really?
I did.
Have you seen? There's a cartridge you can buy now. Like the Vectrex is one of the only really old consoles where people are still making games for it. You know
Really?
that? There is still people making games for it, and there's a cartridge you can buy. I've got one that has a bunch of dip switches on it, and it has every game ever released for the Vectrex on one cartridge. And you just move the dip switches, and it plays a different game. Yeah,
Wow,
mine's still operational. Yeah, good for you, dude. Well done.
Yeah. Well, you
course
called
you
me out. I had to.
You couldn't not. Yeah, I know you. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about DJ's house in California, shall we?
You've been there a few times. And,
Oh yeah. It had a stage in it. It has a stage in this house with a bar next to it. Literally, this huge bar next to it, and a stage. And there's enough seating to actually probably seat 100 people in this thing. The only way you could make DJ's house more rock and roll than it actually was to put in a pool and drive a Rolls Royce into it. It's the most amazing house.
There were suggestions that I do that at one point. I did not. In fact, get
And
a
had a
full
great-
oil roller.
And it had a great view of the valley too.
Yeah, it did. It did. My one funny joke. My wife, when she moved in, she was bugging me. It gets hot there. Woodland Hills gets really hot, and she wanted me to put a pool in. Every year, and I didn't want the hassle. You gotta have a pool guy. It gets murky, and you gotta clean it, and I don't know. But we saw this thing where you could get cargo containers like put in with one side plexiglass, so like people driving by the hillside would see up into you swimming. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. But I just kept saying no. And so one summer, I came home from work. She's like, well, you're not getting a pool, so we did this. And I went out back, and she had bought a blow-up pool and put it out there, and we had so much fun in it that summer. Now we just
Sounds
buy
like
a new
Elsa.
blow-up pool every summer.
Sounds
Yeah.
like Elsa, yeah. I imagine the plexi-sided container, that could be a bit worrisome when you're skinny dipping. And you would. I know you would.
Maybe, I don't know.
Maybe. Oh, Anyway, let's get back to games.
Okay, so why don't we rewind a little bit? Let's go back to your early days, midway. So you're programming on Commodore 64.
And I did some
how
Amiga
did
work
you
as well.
how did you transition? So you did some Archon for the Armstrad. Is that the name of it?
Amstrad, the Amstrad CPC and the Sinclair Spectrum. This was years and years ago. I was working for a company called Linsoft in Maidstone in Kent. I was doing a Commodore 64 version of Arkanoid. We had contracted with Firebird to do Arkanoid, and Firebird at the time, Arkanoid was in a lawsuit between Taito and Atari because it was basically Breakout, right? It was jazzed up Breakout, that's what it was. And Atari sued them, and we thought Atari was going to win. So we went to Firebird. Firebird went to Atari, and Atari said, "Yeah, absolutely. When you win, you can do this." So we did it. We built this thing, and then Atari lost, which was unexpected, but whatever. And so Ocean ended up doing a version of Arkanoid themselves. It was okay. It wasn't as good as mine, but it was okay. And that was upsetting. And we went on from that to we were working on Live and Let Die, James Bond. At the time, Domark had the James Bond license, and we'd been commissioned to do Live and Let Die. I was the one who designed it. It was a boat race most of the time, it's that kind of stuff. And we got about 3/4 of the way through that, and then Domark decided to switch it to a different company. And my company just basically went away, it just completely dissolved. And I got really, really angry. I remember being at the Commodore show and yelling and getting into a yelling match with Dominic Strachan. So the two people of Domark was Dominic Strachan and Mark Wheatley. They were partners. And I got into a shouting match at the Commodore show about it. I was really pissed off. And then I said, right, that's it. Sorry, I'm walking away. I am not doing any more games. Fuck this. This is stupid. So I went and finished my degree in computer science, and I was a Cobol mainframe programmer. Can you imagine that? A Cobol. Oh, wow. I had to wear a suit and a tie every day.
Oh man.
I ended up coming out to America in '91, and I came out as a Cobol mainframe programmer. And I only intended to stay for a couple of years, and then of course I met my wife to be. And we decided, if we're going to stick around, if I want to stick around, we get married. The moment, literally, the week after I got my green card, I had a job interview at Midway because I knew time to get back to games. Let's go back to games, right? Midway at the time, they were just at the end of development of the Terminator 2 arcade game. Mortal Kombat hadn't come along yet. NBA Jam hadn't come along yet. And I rock up there. There's probably 30 people in the department at the time, the video department. We were right at the back from the pinball factory. You had to walk all the way through the pinball factory to get to this little scrappy video department at the back, run by George Petro at the time. And I had to do 7 interviews. I had to interview with every person in the video department because the thinking was you don't know who you're going to end up with. The teams would chop and change and people would move from one team to another. So you had to be basically having a thumbs up by everybody. So I did 7 interviews before I got the job. And then I walked in and we started working on Judge Dredd, which was interesting. There was 4 of us working on it. The Judge Dredd, it never got finished. It was one of my eternal regrets that we didn't finish it. It's out there on MAME. You can find it. The MAME because we actually even got to the point of putting games out on test. And the reason we didn't finish it was because at the time we just had Mortal Kombat come out and we just had NBA Jam come out, and both of them were earning money in unprecedented amounts. I mean, it was just money was flooding in for the operators. And we put our game out as a story game rather than a skills game, and we weren't earning the same kind of money. And I remember the team looking at each other and going, "Why are we even going to bother finishing this? What's the point? We're not going to make the same kind of money as them." Everyone was so enamored with the amounts of money that NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat were making that there was this interior feeling of, well, if you can't make that kind of money, why are you bothering? So we didn't finish it, and it's to my eternal shame. We were probably a month off finishing the bloody thing, but we never did. We put 4 games out on test. The ROMs are out there, like I said. You can actually download the ROMs and play it. My wife is in there. She's in the I played it recently. I was at a store where I was trying to buy a main arcade game, and I was like, oh, they have Judge Dredd. So I brought it up, and I'm just playing it. And then I remember, oh yeah, there's Kath walking by with a minute. She's walking a miniature Goro. Right, it's Goro, little tiny Goro. She's walking.
I love it. You guys already have the graphics for it. Yeah, slap it in there. My wife made it into one of my video games. Maybe I don't know if I should tell this one or not. Little Easter egg.
Did she get shot?
No, She is so on Modern Warfare 3. There is a decrepit Vegas level that's all overrun by sand.
Doesn't
And you know when you
start well. That doesn't start well. The way you know it's decrepit and your wife in the same sentence is not a good thing. But keep going.
so you know when you walk around Vegas and they hand out those cards to you on the corner that have strippers.
Oh
on them?
my God!
So the wind affects the sand and debris flying through the air. So there's these little stripper cards that fly through the air. One of them is my wife. If you freeze frame just right, yeah. Not new to
You know,
anything.
I was going to say I have a spare room you can stay in when she finds out about this. Okay, you know, you come live with me.
She's stoked that she made it into the game. Two questions so far on the stuff you just said. One is, what was the Cobol mainframe job that you came to the States for? And two, was Ed Boon in your interview? Was he already at Midway when you?
Yeah, no. Ed Boon was originally in pinball. He wrote the Black Knight 2000, I think it was, pinball machine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he started up in pinball and then came down. The first game I think he worked on was a football game. I can't remember what it was called. It was a football game he worked with Eugene on. And then he went to do Mortal Kombat with John Tobias and John Vogel. That was his second arcade game, really. He was there. He was part of the interview. To be honest with you, I've always got on with Ed. We actually have the same birthday, born on the same day, which is interesting.
Okay.
It sucked though, because at Midway, Midway would take you out for lunch. Other people in Midway, the teams would take you out for lunch on your birthday. They go wherever you want and they buy your lunch, right? Great. Well, we always went where bloody Ed Boon wanted to go because it was his birthday too, you know.
Right.
But I used to give Boon so much shit. We had this joke where everyone at the time was using Quicken, right?
Okay.
And I used to joke that he had his own version of Quicken for millionaires that automatically put 2 zeros on the end of anything you put into it, you know. And then when, like, you know, then when he went off and formed Nether Realms or Nether Regions, as I call it, but wait, that's a bit rude, but Nether Realms. I used to joke that he'd gone up from Quicken for millionaires to Quicken for billionaires. Now it adds 4 zeros instead. But yeah. Well, he's the nicest, most unassuming guy, and he absolutely knows his shit. And he's such a nice fella to talk to. And you know, you go in, and he's never angry at you. He's always got time to talk to you. He's always such a nice. I mean, yeah, I liked him a lot. I must admit, he's one of the good guys, you know.
Wonderful. That's good to hear. I put a lot of stock in that these days. The people you work with, we've always, you know, we've all worked with some, you know, pain in the asshole in the past, and it's just like, I don't want to do that again. I try to be more selective about who we work with these days.
I've got to imagine that Boon's out of his mind at this point, though, in terms of, you know, pretty much the only product he gets to work on these days is either Injustice or bloody Mortal Kombat. He's got to be so sick of Mortal Kombat by this point. But, you know, there are worse legacies to have, I should guess.
Yeah, they just announced the new one, and I got a little emotional, like, watching the trailer. It was, I thought it was pretty sweet.
There was the Cobol game, the Cobol thing. That was just a contract. That was just a contracting job. The thing is, I was working in London for British Telecom International, and it became clear. I wrote basically an international billing system for them. So anytime you made a phone call in England, using an international phone call in England using a credit card, you were going through my code. But it got to the point where I began to realize that I was working for someone who was a really good leader, and he was the same level as I was. And he kept going for interviews to get bumped up, and he just couldn't do it. And I began to realize that British Telecom International was very much dead man's shoes. You had to wait for someone to die before you moved up. And so, short of, you know, hiring a hitman, there wasn't anywhere for me to go. So I started looking around, and I remember answering one ad in the newspaper about going to America, and I just thought, I wonder if I could get the job. And the next thing I know, I've got a stamp in my passport, I've got a ticket on British Airways. I guess I'm going to Chicago, and that's how it happened.
All right, the rest is history. I remember you have told me privately in the past about an Easter egg in the early Mortal Kombat. I don't know, 1 or 2. We probably shouldn't reveal here and now.
Boon would be upset. Boon would be upset. We never understood when the PC version of it came out how people didn't really find it, but whatever. Yeah, yeah.
So,
There were lots of stories at the time. There was one story like when Kano, for example, like rips the heart out of your chest. Originally, he holds it up, right? Rips it out and holds it up but he was supposed to eat it. That's actually what he did originally, but we didn't have enough frames. There wasn't enough space for frames, and Ed was constantly cutting out frames to try and make fit us into the 16 megs of RAM we had. That's all we had on those arcade machines. So yeah. Anyway, there are other stories which I won't go into.
So cannibalism. That's where the cannibalism got cut. Nice. NBA Jam. That's a pretty legendary game too. I remember that from the arcade as a young man. Can you talk about Big Head mode? That was
a bug.
Kind of where that started, right?
Well, what originally happened was the original game. When we were just prototyping it was being prototyped. There's Mark Trammell was doing most of this. We had the NBA character running around, and with the NBA, you actually have to get two different licenses. You get the NBA, which enables you to use the teams, and then you get the Players Association that allows you to use the players, right? And we didn't think we were going to get the Players Association. We didn't think we were going to get that, and we did because the NBA wanted it, so we got it. And at that point, everyone was looking around, going, "Oh shit, what are we going to do? How do we put all the heads in? How do we get the players in?" Because we couldn't record all the players individually, doing all of the motions. So in the end, what they did was we sat down and tried to work out, could we cut the heads off the bodies of the guys that we actually had, recorded? Could we cut their heads off and then and we went, I can't even remember where we got most of the content of the heads. The heads came from, I don't really remember where they came from, but we sat down. I remember the job, the art job of cutting out these heads for all the different angles and the rest of it, and then put them on the bodies. And we did. And then sometimes the scale was wrong. When they were imported, the scale was wrong. And that's where the big heads came from. And it was fun.
It was funny. So, all right.
Just left it in. Yeah. There was some great stories because that game sucked for so long. It was so unfun. It just wasn't a fun game. Originally, it was supposed to be much more of a simulation, less of a game and much more of a simulation. And we had, I'm the referee in there, and we had video of me that was supposed to pop up. Yeah, there was supposed to be video that popped up in the little corner of me going traveling or, all that kind of stuff, right? That was what we were originally going to do. And then that all got cut. We ran out of space because now all the heads are going in, so we didn't have any space for video, so that all got cut. And it all became a much more open game, which is fine because it's a game and it makes a lot of money and it's a lot of fun. But it sucked. It wasn't fun for the longest time. And then I remember it was around Christmas time. This was Mark Trammell had a party at his house. It was on a Friday. He had a big party, and he had a home development kit. He had a kit at home, development system. And then we came in on Monday, and Mark was still there. He'd been at the office all weekend. He hadn't gone home at all. Probably reeked as well. I don't remember, and the game was suddenly fun. He had spent all weekend just tweaking, just playing and tweaking it, playing and tweaking it. Not adding anything new, just tweaking out everything that was there. And suddenly it was fun. It was the weirdest thing of it's not fun to it's fun without actually changing the game and the feature set, just tweaking the values.
Parameters, yeah. And I think one of the things that was great in that game, I don't know if it pioneered it or not, but some of the catch-up mechanics, right?
The rubber banding.
If someone's ahead, then...
Yeah. Well, I mean, video games have done that for the longest time. Mortal Kombat does it. If you're playing a Mortal Kombat game, you're playing a single-player game against the computer. Every time you go up a level, the difficulty goes up by 1. And what happens is when you lose, if you buy in again, the game goes down 1 difficulty, so that you've gone down 1, and you beat him. But when you go to the next player, if you beat that guy, you go back to the next player. It goes back to what it would have originally been. So if you were at difficulty level 4, it'll go down to difficulty level 3. You'll win. You go to the next guy, he's now difficulty level 5. And what that does is it encourages buy-in. It's all about taking money, mate. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
For NBA Jam though, it was about can you make the basket or not? If you are, I think it was if you are more than 8 points or 7 points or something like that between you, there's a difference between two sets of players. In the last 30 seconds, you can pretty much guarantee the players that are 8 points down will make every basket they try, whereas the other team will not make any. because the whole idea is to make it as close as possible, make it exciting, make them play all the way through to the end. That was the idea.
Yeah, I one anecdote from my time. I remember when I was on Halo. I was a big Halo fanboy. I worked on Halo 3 at Bungie, and then going to Infinity Ward. And I talked a bit with them about the differences in matchmaking between those two games, and there were fairly different philosophies. I kind of preferred Halos at the time, where they used true skill, right? So there's essentially a 0 to 50 rating, and then the matchmaking is favoring trying to find people that are that are a skill match to you, right? Because in my mind, like, the best game, the time you jump out of your seat and you scream and you have excitement is not when you just crush them, and it's not when you get crushed. It's when you win, but we're slightly behind just before that, right? A comeback from behind. So I found that, like, that happened quite a lot in Halo, where it was a well-fought match, right? Your similar skills. In Call of Duty matchmaking back in the Modern Warfare 1-2 era, it didn't do that at all. It was just like best ping, who will have the fastest connection, and would get a group of people, and whoever's like the fastest together in aggregate, you are the whatever 5-on-5 team. And then it would just kind of like, okay, now how do we sort these 10 people to make you? And you'd have people with wildly different skills, and they kind of referred to it as, wolves versus sheep. Some games you would just roll over, some games you would get rolled over. And I kind of favored the Halo style of matchmaking, where like there was more tension to me, and it was more often like wins from behind, which is like the most elation you're going to have in a match like that.
Well, I mean, to a certain degree, it depends on what you want to get out of it as well. If you really want to get better, you need to play with somebody who's significantly better than you, who wipes the floor with you, so you can see why. Assuming you can get over your own ego, because let's face it, a lot of people can't. But there's a ranking system called ELO, which is what Age of Empires uses, and it's based off of a golf ranking system. And it determines, basically, everyone starts out at the middle at like 5,000 or 2,500 points, I think is what it is. And when you play somebody else, the basic difference in scores you have... I'm going to have to pause, dude. Sorry about this. I just need to pause for 1 second. Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've got a call that I need to take, so...
Take it. I'm going to mark this so we can edit it out.
Right. Hey, Steve. I'm right in the middle of a podcast that I'm recording right now. Can I call you back in about 10 minutes? Or for half an hour? Great. Thanks, mate. Bye. I'm sorry, it's my accountant, and I've got some stuff that I have to go over with him. I apologize. Right, so getting back to ELO. So ELO, basically, if there's a difference between two players, you get points added to you if you win, and the person who loses gets points removed from them. And it's a balancing system that they use. It doesn't really work as well when you're playing in teams, but it works really well as a one-on-one kind of thing. And that's a ranking system that I think a lot of games use behind the scenes. In fact, some of the back-end systems actually give you ELO as an ELO value. When you play a game with somebody else, it'll automatically give you an ELO value at the end of it. So, yeah, I'm all about... I mean, it depends. If I want to just have a friendly game, I want someone who's as comparable to me as I can get. But if I want to learn... It's in the same thing as martial arts. If you get on a belt, if you're a white belt and you get on a mat with a black belt, you're going to be thrown all over the place, but you will learn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about so after Midway, did you end up at EA next, or where'd you go from there?
Raven.
Or was that Raven?
Raven up in Madison,
down in
Wisconsin.
Yeah. What was your first game with them?
Heretic 2. That was what I was hired for. Heretic 2 was probably one of the best development experiences of my life, to be honest with you. The team there was about 25 people, and it was great. We did a complete game in 11 months from start to finish. You could never do that today. You just couldn't. We made a complete game in 20. It was a third-person game with mostly melee, but with some fantasy, some magic weapons, that kind of thing. We built it, and we hit the exact date we said we were going to hit. We put it out. It was, and then three days later, Half-Life released, which just went squashed us completely. When it's like, I mean, Half-Life was a better game. It's hard to argue that Half-Life wasn't a better game, because it was. but it was also a year late, you Valve bastards. And it just rolled over the top of us. Like no tomorrow. It's a shame, but it was a lot of fun. I had a lot of good times on that. The team was great. Everyone knew what they were doing. We pushed, and yeah, it was great. Then after that, I think it was Soldier of Fortune, and then we did. I bumped about from different things. I wrote a whole bunch of multiplayer stuff on Soldier of Fortune. I did Ghoul 2 for Soldier of Fortune 2, which is the animation system, and I did some lip syncing stuff and animation stuff for Star Trek Elite Force. I did Jedi Knight 2 and Soldier of Fortune 2, and I left right towards the end of when I think Star Trek Elite Force was just about to be released. I think was when I left.
What year roughly was that?
It would have been I got to Raven in 90. I think it was either 96 or 97. I think it was, and then I left in 2001. And the reason I know it was 2001 was because I was interviewing at EA when September 11th happened. I was supposed to be on a plane to San Francisco like days after it happened, and I remember EA saying, "Hey, if you don't want to come, that's fine." I was like, "Hey, screw that," I'm not. Right now is going to be the safest time to fly in the ever. And I'm not about to let some people in the Middle East, a small group of people in the Middle East, stop me from getting a job. So, yeah, that was that time. I remember that.
Man. Yeah, I was gonna ask if I interviewed at Raven, and in my head it was like Soldier of Fortune 2, but no, that was years later. So you were well gone by the time.
Yeah, it would have been Quake 4 Singularity time, I think.
Yeah,
a good bunch. They were for a group that's in the middle of bloody nowhere and very hard for them to acquire veteran talent. They are a very successful studio. They're doing a lot of Call of Duty work right now, as you know, a lot of Call of Duty content work. So it's a shame that they're not doing original stuff, frankly, because they are good. I mean, Singularity apart.
True, yeah. Or they were working on Wolverine when I was interviewing there in 2008. I ended up at Infinity Ward instead, and then came to work with those guys.
They ended up working with them anyway, yeah.
Down the road. So you interviewed at EA. You got the job. You went up on The Sims.
Well, I got the job. I was interviewed originally for The Sims 2. Then for some reason, I got told, no, you can't work on Sims 2, and I don't remember what it was. There was a reason I couldn't. And so then I got interviewed for SimCity 4, and I bullshitted my way through whatever I did. I got the job offer, and then in between the time of me starting on getting to San Francisco and starting, I got moved across on Sims 2. So I was like, yeah, okay, great, I should do that then. So that's what I did. Awesome. I did 3 months. I did 3 months on the original Sims, where I was working on an expansion pack, because they wanted me to get used to using the tools that I was going to be manipulating and changing and expanding. So I actually did a lot of work on Sims Vacation.
Okay, nice. Yeah. You didn't overlap Bruce Wilkie, did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I know Bruce, yeah.
Where did I work with Bruce?
He's a Blizzard. He's a Blizzard. He works a lot of work on Overwatch.
Yeah, I remember he had me... I got to do, when I was in Infinity Ward, I got to do a sister studio tour. They took me, and I met Bruce there. Where did we work together? Was it Wild Tangent, I think, up in Seattle?
Probably.
He ended up Blizzard, I ended up Infinity Ward, and he showed me like I got to see a very early build of Overwatch when it was an MMO game. It was like a cartoony sci-fi MMO game, like originally. And he had done the sort of the character avatar creator for Sims 4, maybe.
Yeah. Well, no, Sims 4. I don't think because I know. Yeah, Sims 3 would have been, because a lot of the Sims 2 team left after Sims 2 because it was a bit of a death march towards the end, and none of us really wanted to be dragged onto the expansion packs, right? So the expansion packs were a particularly weird situation. As a team, you were expected to produce at least 2 of these things a year. So you were in crunch mode twice a year, but you would only get a bonus once every 2 years. So you were crunching a lot more than regular teams were, but you weren't getting the bonuses that, you were getting a bonus once in a while. And it sucked. And that's why a lot of the Sims 2 team quit and went off to do other things, or within EA. I went off to the console group in EA. And what's really weird, though, is that quite a lot of the Sims 2 team reformed for Sims 4. There's a lot of original Sims 2 people on Sims 4. Yeah, I was quite surprised at that.
I played the hell out of The Sims 1 and 2 with my girlfriend at the time when I was living in Seattle, and I was excited for Sims Online, and I don't know, it just didn't grab me.
Every Friday afternoon, the entire Maxis group was told, right, Friday afternoons, you play Sims Online. And I remember Gordon Walton, one of the producers, running through the studio, like with a laptop. He had a Dell laptop that was almost surgically attached to his hand. How he never dropped it, I don't know. But he would never walk. He would always run. He would always be running through the studio. But I remember they had sold a whole bunch of licensing for Sims Online. McDonald's was one of them, right? Okay. You could go to McDonald's and get food. And I remember, I think it was BJ West, I think, was the artist at the time who was told go away and build a McDonald's in Sims Online, and he point blank refused to do it. It's like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing it. Just refuse. Fire me if you want. I'm not doing it. But the Sims Online, it was one of these weird things. It could never understood what it wanted to be. It was because the Sims itself does not lend itself to a massively multiplayer social environment of that nature. You think it would, but it doesn't. And it became clear really fast that people didn't know what to do with it. It's a bit like Second Life. I mean, I did 2 years on Second Life, and it's one of those things where even having worked on it for 2 years, I still don't understand what it's for. But yeah.
Just kind of fucking around and
yeah. I mean, there's a certain degree of that. I feel the same way about Minecraft, but Minecraft that has a better reward cycle, activity reward loop than say Second Life, and certainly that Sims Online did. But it's a very strange idea. But at the time, EA wanted online presence, and they thought this was the way to do it. So,
speaking of Minecraft, like I've been just out of curiosity watching a bunch of computer science videos and like how do these CPU things work exactly, and it's amazing to see what kind of like functional CPUs people make inside of Minecraft.
Somebody built a 6502.
Yeah,
somebody built a 6502 in there, and I'm like, while it's terrific that you can do that, and that Minecraft is Turing complete enough that you can build something like that, which is amazing. Let's be clear, it is. Why? I don't get why. Why would you spend your time doing that? What a strange thing to do. I don't quite understand that, but whatever.
That's another one.
Everyone's different.
A fellow built RAM in Minecraft. There's like, here's 16K of RAM with just tons of stuff all stacked together.
What are you going to do with it? Can play some Spectrum games? I mean, what? I mean,
back to The Sims. Do you have any fun anecdotes for us? Any fun stories?
Oh, you already told me I'm not allowed to tell some of the stories I want to tell.
You can talk about the story, just maybe not phrase it.
All right, so here's a great one. So the original, one of the first objects that we built in Sims 2 was the hot tub.
Okay.
And the reason for it was because the hot tub had a whole bunch of, we were planning on a whole bunch of new features for Sims 2 that weren't there in Sims 1. The ability to interrupt an activity, an interaction, right? When a Sim is interacting with something, you're stuck in that interaction until the interaction is completed. The idea was you could actually insert other interactions into an existing one. So get in the hot tub was interaction, and then get out and get everyone some drinks, and then come back was sort of an interrupting interaction. So it was a subclass of interaction. There was a new idea. And there was a whole bunch of things. It was multiple people. It wasn't just one Sim or two Sims. You could have up to 4 Sims sitting in the hot tub, and it had all of the things that we needed to test out our new systems we were building. So it was the first thing we built. And I remember right at the very end of the project when we were finishing, there's a thing called Sims Whoopee, right? I don't know if you know what Sims Whoopee is, but it's Rumpy Pumpy, basically. It's Sims Rumpy Pumpy. And usually it's done in a bed, and what happens is, the Sims disappear under the covers. And then and lots of like, ooh, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But they can also do whoopee in the hot tub too.
Okay.
Right? But only 2 of the Sims could do it. So I put a bug into Jira right towards the end of the product that said, look, when the Sims are doing whoopee, there is no join interaction. And this bug went all the way up to the executive producer, to Lucy, Bradshaw, who's the executive producer, went all the way up to her and then came back to me with a comment saying, declined, not enough time for animations.
I love it.
So The Sims is missing threesomes, not because EA didn't want to do it, but because they didn't want to spend the time making the animations for it.
Nice. Okay, that is awesome. I remember one just stupid joke bug that I filed at Bungie one time. They were crunching at the end of Halo 3, and some of the guys would do crunch stashers. They wouldn't shave until the game was done. And my boss Steve had his crunch stash, and I filed a bug against it. I bugged Steve's the repro steps where walk over to Steve's desk, have strange feelings inside. I forget the rest of it. And that bug got passed all over the studio, and everyone added fucking extra repro steps and comments. Yeah, that's when game does fun.
Kind of fun. You got to have those kinds of fun, because when you're crunching and there's shit going on and everyone's tired and irritable and all the rest of it, you got to have a sense of humor. That's the time to have it. Now, I have to ask you a question. I know she asked you, but I have to ask you a question about this, because I've heard this story repeated multiple times, and I want to know if it's true.
All right.
I think it was Halo 2. Halo 2 was the one with the Forge, I think, the first time they allow you to build stuff in there, whatever. Originally, I heard tell that there was going to be a clan patch system, whereby if you were a member of a clan in Halo, you could upload your own patch that was on the side shoulder, that appeared on the shoulder of all of the clan members to identify them. So it's an image that, low resolution image you can put on site. And my understanding of the story is that when this feature was introduced, when it was still in development, there was a group of people at Bungie who immediately put purple penises as their clan image. Right, the Times penis was like that, right? And so immediately on that happening, the feature was removed, because if you can't even trust the development team not to abuse it, God knows what people out in the world were going to do. Is that a true story? I heard.
I don't know, actually. I wasn't there for Halo 2, so that was a little before my time. A couple of funny anecdotes I remember from the Bungie days. One was they bought the building next door. This was back when they were in Kirkland, which was the coolest office. And somebody, I think they were moving tests over that building and one or two other departments. So they were just carrying, just stuff from the office, computers and crates, and some of the props that were around. So Master Chief's sniper rifle was one of them. That's like comically, that is like correct to scale for a 9-foot tall chief, right? So you've got like a 6-foot, 7-foot long sniper rifle, and somebody just walked that up the sidewalk of Kirkland.
Oh,
and
Nino.
Yeah. The SWAT team was called. They're like, oh god, that's a dumb. That's funny how off. That's not my only similar story to that too. I remember our man Bowling. He was the community manager at Infinity Ward back in the day. And after Modern Warfare 2, they built Ghost, like life-size statues of Ghost for like promotion to put in like GameStops kind of like around the world. And they built like 30 of them or something. And they didn't have anything to do with them, so they offered us, the devs, like if you wanted one to take home, it was like just pay for, it was like $3,000 or something. And a bunch of the guys bought them. Bowling went on to start another company. And the story goes, I haven't heard this firsthand from him, but the story goes that he had it in their lobby, and it's like, ski mask, skull on it, M16, like the whole like military camo. And they had installed a new security system or something, and Bowling like tested the button or something, and then immediately realized
oh shit,
it was a panic switch button, because game companies get like
bomb threats,
a lot. Like we go through bomb threat training and all kinds of stuff, and so he sent everyone home, and I think I heard, I don't know how accurate this story is, but the word I heard was, he kind of got on the ground when the police arrived, and they look through the blinds and see
this guy with a
ghost. So, like, it was a bad scene.
I could imagine. I mean, you're going to get done for wasting police time at the end of the day for that. See, now I have a solution for that, because in my lobby, I have the ultimate head of security, which is one of these.
The Dalek.
Yeah, I have a full size one in my lobby, so no one's really gonna worry about that. You know,
They don't want to get zapped to death.
Yeah. Then just no one's gonna worry about that. So, what do you want to
Jake,
talk about?
What's that?
Is there more you want to talk about?
No, I was gonna wrap it up.
Okay.
Is there more you want to talk about?
Well, there was, there's the Second Life experience. That was quite a fun company 2.0, as I call them. There's other stories. We can do it another time.
Okay, that sounds good. Right on. With that, thank you very much for being on the show. This has been Architects of Imagination. It's been a pleasure to have you on, Jake.
Thanks very much.
I'd like to thank our executive producer, Martika Ibarra, and our editor, Robert Meyer-Burnett, the whole Architects of Imagination team. Check out this on wherever good podcasts are found and on YouTube, and we'll see you next time.